evening, and it's late nights with warm whiskey. As promised, I'm going to be a little bit more diligent about tackling these reviews. I have a long list of things I need to review, and I just need to bear down and get these done. So tonight, we are going to take a little trip to the Isle of Isla, and we are going to be sampling some Lagavulin 11 year, the Offerman Edition. So this is the second expression released from Lagavulin with their collaboration with Nick Offerman, and this time around they switched it up a little bit. I believe the last expression was mainly ex-bourbon barrels. This is a finished whiskey. So you take 11-year-old Lagavulin and then they finish it in Guinness barrels. So those Guinness barrels are actually bourbon barrels that were used at their Baltimore location here in the United States to age Guinness, and then shipped over to Scotland, where they finished this whiskey for 4 months, as it states on the package, which is kind of nice to have that information. You don't always know how long a finish is or the process of it, especially with single malts and Scottish whiskey in general, be it blended or a single malt. They're pretty tight-lipped about their process, and they don't often divulge that much information. So it's nice to know how long this actually finished for inside these Guinness barrels that I believe once aged bourbon, then aged Guinness. So this is a third use, and that bodes well because historically the Scots are pretty frugal, and they like to get a good deal, and they like to get the most out of whatever they're using. So no problems with that. It is bottled at a solid, decent 46% alcohol by volume. So we have a 92 proof Scotch. Lagavulin being an iconic classic Scotch. Something that, when I was first getting into whiskey and first exploring Scotch, was quite enamored with the Lagavulin 16, the classic expression from that distillery. But as the years have rolled on and my palate has evolved and I began drinking a lot more Scotch, bourbon, rye, and also coming to the conclusion that when you really get into whiskey and you want to break down flavors and you want that higher ABV, so the Lagavulin 16 to me has become a little bit boring and pedestrian at its 43%, so 86 proof, which at least, again, we have that. Like I think I have discussed in some of my previous videos, same with your Highland Park, we get to 12 at 43%, but in the European Union, they get it at straight up 40%, so 80 proof. So at least it's not as watered down as our friends across the pond get it. So with that said, we have a really handsome looking label there. We've got old Nick Offerman's bust up on the top label, and then we have the standard, lower label. Very nice, classic, off greenish, somewhat off greenish bottle. just go ahead, after I set it down, pick it back up, pop the cork, and we're gonna pour a little. This bottle's been open. I've spent some time with it. As I always like to do before I do these reviews, I don't feel that it's fair or, you know, does justice to the whiskey if I just do a fresh crack. I mean, sometimes it's fun to just do a fresh crack and give your initial interpretations, but if I can, and usually do, I like to spend a little bit of time, have a few pours of it. You know, day to day, your taste is going to change, and I've said this before, what you eat's going to affect what happens, what your mood is. That's all going to come down to how you enjoy or how it affects the taste of what you're going to drink. So I've took my time, had a few pours of this here and there, and we're going to go right back into it. I'll give you my nose and tasting notes, and I'll say this now. I if anybody watches these, I purposely try to keep my tasting notes at a bone basic minimum. I do not want to get over wordy and crazy with what I pick up from these whiskeys. I believe all of them at the core, Scotch has a much wider breadth of flavors and aromas, but it itself, whether it be a Speyside, a Highland, or a Lowland, or an Island Scotch, they all have their distinct flavors, and there's going to be some of those core tasting notes that you're going to find in those whiskeys. So I don't want to say things that are going to turn people off to whiskey by going crazy into, you know, some of these tasting notes. I try to keep it simple and allow people to get at least a glimpse of what it may be, and leave your own palate to make the final decision, your own conclusion on whatever given whiskey it is. I'll tell you if it's a thumbs up, if I believe you should buy it. I will tell you if I think it's a good value, if it isn't. So just trying to be as honest as I can, simple and straightforward. With that said, let's do a little nosing on the Lagavulin 11-Year Offerman Edition. Right off the bat on the nose, getting this wonderful fruity, you know, that doughy, yeasty type of, and then there's a saltiness to it too. There is some of that, you know, again, these distilleries sit right next to the sea on a tiny little island, so that salty air can play a big influence on the taste of a whiskey. So there's definitely a nice briny, doughy fruit. There is the smoke and peat, but it's a very gentle smoke and peat. This is nowhere near the campfire of a Ardbeg or the funky, brackish Lefroy, but a very pleasant nose on this. Just a really nice, fruity, slightly smoky, get that salty, doughy, almost yeast-like. If you've ever been or near like a bakery or a bread factory, there's that smell. It can be overwhelming and can kind of turn you off, really. I really hated the smell of bread and never realized that yeasty smell until I got worked close to and got exposed to that smell, and then I could smell it in like your bread aisle. But this is not that pungent or overpowering. There's just that hint of that sense that it's there. So 46% alcohol by volume, so 92 proof. Really getting a nice moderate coating of the glass there. Seems to cling. A little bit of legs on this whiskey. But it really does help, you know, coating the edge of your glass, especially with a Glencairn. That really helps open up and gives you a good nosing of what it is. There's something about Islay Scotch that's just so goddamn captivating. There's just a relaxing component to the just even when you sit down and you smell it and then you take that first sip, it's a very relaxing experience. So with that, let's see what arrives on the palate. It's got that mouth-watering sensation that I get from single malts. It's very rare that I find that in a bourbon or a scotch, but even though, I mean, this is only 92 proof, but at the same note, that's high enough, and it has that cooling, watering sensation. But there's actually like a kind of a little like chili pepper kick going on once it hits the palate. There is some of that brininess, there is the fruit and the dough, and there's a creamy, almost chocolate vanilla type component, which has to be coming from probably the combination of the Guinness casks that were bourbon casks. This was finished in for 4 months, so that's definitely changing the dynamic of what would be classic Lagavulin. As of late, I don't really go or purchase the 16-year anymore. I tend to stick with the 8-year is my preference. The 12-year, if and when you can find it, is amazing. That's cask strength. I quite often get asked the question at work, oh, why is this more expensive than the 16-year? It's only 12 years old. Now, look at the label and realize they are not cutting that barrel. It is cask strength. And when you're not stretching that barrel and watering it down, they're not going to make as much money off of it. So there is going to be an increase in price. Cask strength scotches, they're few and far between. There's more that have hit the marketplace than ever has, but they tend to be in that, especially even with no age statement, in that, you know, $90 to $100 range. And I have no problem with that. The Lagavulin 12, depending upon the marketplace you're in, is, you know, after the tariffs, it went really up. It used to be about $1.10, $1.20. It's crept up. Now the tariffs have been lifted. Let's see if the states will actually roll back the prices. I doubt they're going to do that. Not holding my breath on that one. they know we're still going to shell out to get what we want. Finish on this is medium, medium, a good solid medium finish on this. It's not that long, but it's definitely doesn't cut itself short. It's a nice, pleasant ride. It arrives right on there with that cooling sensation. You get some of that fruit, the dough, the brininess, and then that kind of like a chili pepper kick kicks in, and then it rides off with that chocolate vanilla creaminess that is quite enjoyable. So my interpretation right off the bat, well, I've spent some time with this, and I had the first release, the that was primarily bourbon casked. This I'm enjoying more. It's definitely adding a new component to it, and the finishing is working quite wonderfully with the backbone of an 11-year Lagavulin. And we live in a day and age where almost every celebrity is trying to jump into the liquor game and try to come to market with their own products. Everybody's chasing, I think, the big dollars that were made from the likes of Casamigos. That's the one, I think. George Clooney sold that for a nice chunk of change. I believe Sammy Hagar sold the Cabo Wabo for a nice chunk of change. So they were, I believe, pretty smart. They got in it, got it started up. It got a lot of attention, started to grow, and then they cashed out on it. So smart on their behalf. This is a little bit of a different thing. This is a collaboration. This is them using, he's done a lot of things with Lagavulin to begin with. So them creating an expression and collaborating with him makes sense. And at the end of the day, both of the expressions were solid. I tend to think this one is stands out more. The finishing definitely adds new dynamic to it. So nice job, Mr. Offerman. Nice job, Lagavulin. It's a wonderful collaboration that yielded us a pretty goddamn good whiskey. There's just so much going on in the nose, especially on the nose. I could pick apart, and probably, you're always looking for something that you pick up in here that reminds you of something. So you play the game of, oh, that's bananas, oh, that's cinnamon, oh, that's brown sugar, that's vanilla, leather, there's all these smells and tastes that, you pull from the memory files of your olfactory, and gives you what you experience when you're tasting a whiskey. And that's going to vary from person to person. We all have our own little storage of tastes and smells, and some people may pick up things that others won't, which is why I don't like to go too crazy into the description of smell, taste, notes on those things, because at the end of the day, you're going to hopefully be able to try this and enjoy it, or maybe you won't enjoy it, because Islas are not for everyone. It's one of those controversial things that a lot of people have the interpretation that all Scotch is smoky and all Scotch is peated, when the reality is there's a small proportion of them that are actually peated or smoky, and there are a lot of other Scotches out there that bring to the table a totally different flavor profile. And I say this all the time to people who come into the store. I don't like Scotch, or I've had this said to me by friends and other people. They don't like Scotch, it's smoky, and they don't ever want to try it or explore it. But my reply to them is always, if you don't like Scotch, you haven't found the right Scotch yet. And there's quite a few Scotches out there for you to explore, so don't cut yourself short. Give some things a try. The worst case scenario is you may still not like it, but you may discover that you find something that you really like. And I'm in the position where I work in the business and I have to taste a lot of different spirits. A lot of times spirits and liquors and things I don't really care for, but I don't judge them, and till I have tasted it and tried to be as fair as I can with whatever it is I'm trying. At the end of the day, whatever I can try, whatever I can sample is going to be able to help me guide other people to find what they're looking for, and it's hard because you're only a human. You cannot drink all the liquors, all the whiskeys. Not very healthy thing to do. Even now, some of the reasons why I have had some gaps in between doing those reviews is sometimes I just have to pump the brakes and take care of myself and realize that this is something that should be savored and enjoyed on occasion with good people, celebration, relaxation. Never drink out of anger to soothe sorrow. Take care of yourselves and enjoy life. It's a fragile thing, and we're blessed to live in a day and age where we have all these amazing things, and we have access to things that people would have never had access to just a short period of time if we go backwards. So despite all the ill that goes on in the world, we're still doing better right now than we ever have. So don't take that for granted, and enjoy yourself, take care of yourself, and enjoy. On that note, it's a fantastic whiskey. This is going to clock in probably in that $90 to $100 region, depending upon, again, the neck of the woods you reside. Prices vary state by state. You have state-controlled liquor, and you have some that are really strict. They set the minimum price. Some you can't go above whatever the state sets. Then you have privatized states, and there's a big difference across the board in the cost of whatever given bottle you're going to buy. So never quote me or take price to be something set in stone. And even then, I'm just giving you a general range of what you should expect to see these things for. And that's not even getting into the murky, muddy waters of the secondary, the grayish, blackish market, especially for bourbons. Uh, but there's just something about the nose and the taste, the experience of Isla whiskey. Uh, from the first time I tried one, I've been hooked, and I have a great appreciation for it ever since. So give yourself a shot. Give it a shot. You never know. You may like it, you may not. Maybe you want to bounce around some of the other islands that are not as intense as some of your islas can be. You have Talisker, you have Highland Park, you have Jura. So there are other whiskeys out there at varying degrees of intensity, and they all bring to the table their own unique qualities. I tend to have to deal with a lot of people that drink bourbon exclusively. And bourbon and ryes. Ryes are doing good, but not as hot as bourbon still. Don't paint yourself into a corner. Live a little. Explore. On that note, until the next time,